Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode here of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast. We promised we'd have you two this week, and we are delivering to you guys. We had one, Matt Ray and I of Vols Recruiting Reports did one earlier this week of a mailbag variety. We'll have another mailbag one next week because we enjoyed doing that, and we like getting questions from you guys and hearing what you guys want to hear about, questions you guys will have about Tennessee recruiting. So we'll do that again next week. But for now, we're here. All three of us are back and better than ever. I am Nathaniel Rutherford, the managing editor of RocketTopInsider.com, joined by both Matt Ray and Brandon Martin of VR2, that is Vols Recruiting Reports. You can find them at volrecruitingreports.org. They're at _VR2_ on Twitter. They do fantastic stuff, all about recruiting, and I've been kind of leaning on them a little heavier here during the season because once football season gets going, and especially when we get to SEC play, guys, I mean, as you know, it gets very busy, so I had to focus more on the team. But you guys are obviously focusing still quite a bit on recruiting. You guys get to go a lot of different places, watch a lot of different games. And in that vein here, Brandon, I'm going to turn to you first because you mentioned you've got to go see or talk with two linebacker prospects who are on Tennessee's board, and you're going to go see a third here pretty soon as well. So talk about that. You get to go see Len'Neth Whitehead and Bryson Eason, and then I'll talk about who you're going to be able to get to go see here in a second. So talk about those guys and maybe where Tennessee stands and what all you saw and heard from them, both those linebacker prospects.
A couple of weeks ago, I had a chance to go down and watch Len'Neth Whitehead play. He's at Athens Academy in Athens, Georgia, and it's in the write-up that I did on him, the first thing that I wrote is recruiting is a strange game because you would think with a four-star bona fide athlete, great linebacker, size, speed, strength, good kid, the works that a guy like Whitehead is, you would think that surely the hometown Georgia Bulldogs would be all over him. And that is not the case. The SEC team that looks like they're in the best shape with Len'Neth right now is Tennessee. We talked to him, and he said he's got his visit scheduled. He's going to take them. He's going to come to Tennessee, South Carolina, and Wisconsin at the time that I spoke with him. The interesting thing about Len'Neth is that he also plays running back at Athens Academy. He plays running back down there for the Spartans, and he's a big running back. But he's got good feet for a guy his size. He's got good movement, good change of direction, and you see that on film, and I'm not surprised. Wisconsin is looking at him as a running back. South Carolina, he said, is looking at him exclusively at linebacker, and Tennessee is looking at letting him play both, play his choice. I got to watch him for the first half of the game, and I said this in the write-up, and I stand by it. That might be the most impressive half by a linebacker I've ever watched.
Wow. He
hit everything that moved for a half. He was in on absolutely every single play on defense. If he didn't make the tackle, he was the cavalry coming to clean it up. He was going back to knock passes down. He very nearly had an interception, showed his ability to flex out and play a different position and bump out. He saw something that he liked saw something that he had noticed in film work. The team they were playing, I don't remember who they were playing now. I think Stevens County is who they were playing. He saw a tell in the way they lined up on offense, and he bumped over, knew that the right tackle was probably not going to pick him up, and got an unimpeded sack on the quarterback and just delivered a huge blow. If you're looking for a linebacker, especially an SEC linebacker, Whitehead is the kind of guy that you salivate over. He's big. He's probably, I'd say he's about 230 pounds and runs sideline to sideline. Again, you're talking about 230 pounds, and he's fast enough that Tennessee's willing to let him be an SEC running back if that's at this time, if that's what he wants to do. So that tells you something about his speed with the size that he has to go with it. And he's not just a physical character, though. He tackles well. One of the compliments that I think is the biggest thing you can pay to a linebacker is when he gets his hands on a ball carrier, the play is over immediately thereafter, meaning he does not miss tackles. When he gets to you, you go down. It's not always a big hit. It's not always a monster hit. It's not always the highlight stuff, but he has that ability, and he's a good form tackler. When he gets there, he gets you on the ground. The play ends there. You don't run through him. You don't get extra yardage. You don't slip off and break break one for the first time. When he gets a hold of you, that's the end of the play. And with his speed and his size, that's really an impressive combination because he was stopping plays all over the field. He can blitz up the middle. He can blitz up the A-gap. I had not seen him come off the edge on film, and he played some outside linebacker during that game. He also, again, he's very intelligent. He calls the defense for Athens Academy. But when he came up, he saw a tell in that offense, and he told me in his interview afterwards, he said, I knew the tackle wasn't going to see me. He said, I knew he wasn't going to be over there, and he came over almost like an outside linebacker in a 3-4 would. He was basically playing defensive end, only he was still in a 2-point stance rather than 3 points. But his first step coming off that is just incredible for his size. It's a shocking first step, and he closed on the quarterback much faster than I expected him to be able to. Hit the quarterback off the blind side, and now that was a big hit. He completely brought the quarterback up off the ground on that one. I think he's just an incredibly complete player. He has good technique. He has the cerebral aspect of the game. He has the speed and size. This is a guy that I was talking to. One of my best friends is a Georgia grad, and we had gone down there for the Georgia game. And I said, well, if you're going to drag me to Sanford Stadium, you're going to take pictures for me on Friday night. And while we were down there watching Len'Neth and watching Athens Academy, it was so impressive. I think he's a guy that plugs in at the college level at linebacker immediately. Thoughts of him playing next to Henry Toto is just left me salivating a little bit, because that's two big, fast guys that get it. They get it between the ears. They get it between the hash marks. Those are two guys I would love to see playing together. So I left hugely impressed with Len'Neth. And then I followed that up with my game on Friday night. I was at Brentwood Academy when Whitehaven from Memphis came calling to see another one of the big linebacker prospects Tennessee has, 4-star linebacker out of Whitehaven, Bryson Eason. Tennessee was also in on one of his teammates, Markevius French, 4-star linebacker down there who wound up going to Arkansas. And now Bryson is down between Tennessee and Arkansas, or his final two. Really having a hard time telling which way he's leaning on that. He's not much of a talker anyway, and he's kind of hard to read. Whitehaven lost a heartbreaker at the end of that game. They played their hearts out and just came up just short at the end. But Eason had a phenomenal game. I really didn't think. I came into that game going, I know Eason's good. I've watched his tape. I really like him. Man, he's really going to have to. He's got a mountain to climb to impress me after what I saw out of Len'Neth the week before. And all Bryson did was come out and have 8 or 9 tackles. He forced 2 fumbles, a sack, and batted down a ball. I mean, and when you're playing in a linebacking core with 2 other guys that are probably going to start in the SEC next season as well, that's pretty impressive against one of the best teams in the state in Brentwood Academy. Eason's bigger than Len'Neth. I think Len'Neth is probably a step faster, but Bryson is plenty fast. He can eat up the yards. I would say Len'Neth is probably about 230. Bryson Eason's listed at 230. I think he's every bit of 240 or 245. Wow. That is a big linebacker. He is bigger than what he weighs, and he may weigh what they've got him listed at, but he looks bigger than that, and it's muscle. He's a big, thick kid. He's a thumper, man, and you want to talk about a guy that drops the hammer on you when he gets a hold of you. Len'Neth, I talked about him. When he gets a guy, it may not always be that biggest hit. It may not always be punishing, but he gets a guy on the ground every time with the ability to deliver that knockout shot. Everything Eason hits you with is a knockout shot. He had pads popping. He was laying lumber to guys, and Brentwood Academy has good offensive line. They've got in 2021 they have a 4-star offensive tackle in Eli Sutton, who really, really impressed me in that game. They have a 3-star offensive guard. Last name, I'm not going to say his first name wrong because I can't remember. His last name is Josie. I think it might be Noah Josie, but I'm not sure. He's a 3-star guard, but his offer list is incredible. And he looked good as well. Brentwood Academy's got some very talented running backs. And, man, Eason he dealt with speed backs, he dealt with power backs, he dealt with everything that they could throw at him, and really had a good game. One of the fumbles that he forced saved a touchdown. Looked like Brentwood Academy was going to go in. Got down the goal line. Running back is getting ready to dive and stretch out and break the plane, and Eason laid one of those big knockout shots on him. Big hit. Forced a fumble. Whitehaven comes up with it, comes out so they don't get a score, so they don't give up a score. Very timely in his big plays. The sack that he had was on a big, it was on second down. Brentwood Academy was driving late in the game, trying to get the lead back. It was a pass play. Eason came off the blind side for the quarterback. Eason came off the front side of the quarterback, got home on a sack to set up a third, and just huge. Brentwood Academy wound up having to punt. It was a big, big play. Changed the momentum of that game. Really, it looked like it was going to allow Whitehaven to win that ball game when he came up with that sack. Whitehaven got the ball back, wound up having to punt to Brentwood, and then Brentwood hit a long run really late in the game to go ahead. But that was a huge play in that moment in that game. He's as good as advertised as well. I think if you watched him, you'd be reminded a lot of Daniel Batuli. I think their game is real similar. He might be a little bigger than Batuli. I know he's bigger than Batuli was when he came out of high school, but he might be a little bigger than Batuli. But their game is very similar. Big, strong linebacker, plays through traffic well, doesn't mind having linemen on him. He's able to fight through that, delivers those big punishing hits, is solid in coverage. I think that's somewhere he could improve, but he's solid in coverage. He's not a liability on defense, or he's not a liability in pass coverage, but he could stand to improve a bit there. A good blitzer, especially if he gets an alley to shoot. He's good at timing things. He's good at getting into the backfield, and when he gets there, he's got a knack for knocking a ball loose. That's not just the case in the game that I saw him. He's got a knack for forcing fumbles. He's just one of those guys that, between the way he hits you and his body type and the way he wraps you up and knowing when to punch those hands or knowing where to lay that helmet, he has a knack for getting the ball out, and you can't overstate how important causing potential turnovers are. These are two guys that Tennessee's in really good shape with. I think that they could land either of them. I think Tennessee's probably, if you ask me right now, I would think Len'Neth is probably a Tennessee lean, and that I think Eason really truly is 50-50 between Arkansas and Tennessee. I think maybe a very slight edge to Arkansas because his buddy Markevius French is committed there.
Right.
And John Chavis was at that game last Friday, along with his linebackers coach from Arkansas. So, maybe a slight lean there, but I think it's close. I know Tennessee would love to have either of them. And I think Tennessee, and we're going to talk a little about numbers in this episode, but I think Tennessee needs a couple of true linebackers in this class, not necessarily your edge rushers. I think they need at least two real, true, pure linebackers. And if you walked away with Len'Neth Whitehead and Bryson Eason, you've got to be thrilled with what that would be. But there's other guys on the board for Tennessee still.
Yeah, and one of those I was going to ask you about is who you're going to go see here soon, and that is Jackson Bratton, he's been committed to Alabama for a while. I personally would be honestly pretty stunned if he were to be able to be flipped, because he plays down in Muscle Shoals in Alabama too. I mean, he's an Alabama kid. He's been committed to Alabama. I'm about to pull up his profile since March of last year. But Tennessee's been kind of a little bit of an earworm for me. They've been a team that's been right there with him. He's visited Tennessee, I think, a couple different times. So, Brandon, what are you expecting to see from him, and have you had a chance to talk to him before you go and visit him?
I've not had a chance to speak with him before. I think Matt has. I'm not sure. Matt, don't let me put words in your mouth, but I think Matt has.
No, I haven't.
You haven't? I've not had a chance to talk with him, but
if I have, it's been briefly. I don't recall it.
I keep hearing this buzz about he might be able to be flipped. Matt's told me about it as well. Apparently, people think that Tennessee is really there. I know Tennessee's putting a lot of effort into him. Maybe they
as well. Nebraska and Tennessee are the schools really trying to flip him.
And so you've got a pair there that are trying to get him. I'm like you, Nathaniel. There are the precious few kids that Nick Saban wants in the state of Alabama that he fails to get. It is just almost unheard of for him to miss on a kid that he wants in state. Now, that said, two of the guys that historically have been able to pull those kids out are Jeremy Pruitt and T. Martin. We all know about T. Martin, and I don't know what T. Martin is in Mobile. I don't know what it is. Like, I fully expect T. Martin to eventually retire from coaching and just go be the mayor of Mobile, Alabama, because the man can get whatever he wants down there. Every good football player that comes out of Mobile, it seems like T's like a snake charmer. I don't know. It's amazing to watch. But Pruitt and T are two guys that recruit Alabama really well. They have been able to beat Saban out a couple of times. One of the only other people is Dabo. Dabo can go in there and get guys every now and then. And you look at a guy like Bratton. If you're Tennessee, you need that. You need a guy to replace Batuli. You're looking for a guy to come in and immediately replace him. I don't think Tennessee feels like they have Batuli's full-time replacement on this roster right now. They need depth at linebacker anyway, but they need quality players there. If they feel like they can get Bratton and he fits that mold, then one of the things they're going to be trying to pitch to him is, look, you can come to Knoxville and start next to Henry Toto, or play with Len'Neth Whitehead, or play with Quavaris Crouch, or Roman Harrison, or some of these other guys Tennessee is in on. You're going to have a chance to be a part of a really, really good, young, athletic linebacking core, and you're not going to have to wait 3 years to wait your turn. You're going to be able to come in and play right away and play 3-4 years and go on. Pruitt has got a reputation of coaching up good linebackers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe they're able to go in there and get him. He's another one of those. He's a big, physical 3-4 middle linebacker. Plays smart on film. He's another guy, when he hits you, the play's over. When his hands get on you, that's the end of the play. You're going down. And when you look at Tennessee's tackling and the bugaboos they've had with that the last several seasons, especially last year, and at times this year, I don't think it's an accident Pruitt is targeting several guys who are really sure tacklers. That has hurt this defense badly. They've been in position several times to end plays, but the first or second man misses, and you give up the first down, you give up 5 or 6 extra yards. You know, think about some of the third down conversions Tennessee's given up over the last 3 or 4 years because they didn't tackle guys they should have. And it's been a bit of an epidemic at times. I don't think it's an accident Pruitt's bringing in guys who are, when you put on their film, noted for tackling well, noted for hitting a ball carrier and getting them on the ground when they get there. How different would some of these close games they've lost be if you didn't give up that second effort first down? So Bratton's a target. I will say that if there's a coaching staff that is going to be able to flip a kid out of Alabama away from Nick Saban and get him completely out of the state, because Auburn's always in play there too. But if you're talking about flipping him and getting him out of the state, I think having Pruitt and T. Martin on staff, and Derek Ansley too, for that matter, on staff is probably as good a chance as any staff has got of pulling a kid out of there that Saban wants and going head-to-head for him to get it. I think it's a long shot, But this is also a really, really gifted recruiting staff, and they're not particularly noted for wasting their time. They're not going to waste that much time and effort on a kid that they don't have any hope of getting some headway with.
Yeah, I can agree with that too. And to kind of transition a little bit here into our numbers talk, and to still kind of specifically focus here on the linebacker spot, I agree with you, Brandon. I think Tennessee needs to take a couple different linebackers in their 2020 class. As of right now, they don't have any committed. I mean, they have B.J. Ojolari, he's a outside linebacker prospect. He's listed as a defensive end, so I guess he kind of counts as one. But they don't have, as you're mentioning, these true kind of middle linebacker type of guys that can replace Daniel Batuli, that will end up replacing Will Ignat and Shannon Reed when they graduate next year. You're gonna be losing 3 linebackers off the roster here in the next 2 seasons, and you have Henry Toa, who's really good. You have a guy like Quavaris Crouch who you can probably move back inside if you want to, but they also, I think they really like what they have from him on the outside right now, maybe even his hand in the dirt as kind of a defensive end type of guy. But you have to, I think Tennessee's targeting several different linebackers. And Matt, I'll ask you, we'll get to some of the bigger names in first here, but there's another guy who I wanted to ask about who I think he's also like Len'Neth Whitehead, where he plays running back and linebacker. But do you have any sort of feel on Jamari Littlejohn? Because he's an interesting prospect. If I remember correctly, I think I spoke with him a while back, like back in their early summer, if I'm remembering correctly. I know I remember his name. I just remember if I actually interviewed him or not. I feel like I did, but I don't recall. But he's a guy who, if I remember correctly, like I said, plays on both sides of the ball. Is he a name that if Tennessee misses on some guys, they could keep an eye on, or maybe that they are still keeping an eye on right now, even with him being, I mean, he's rated as a low 3-star on 247 Sports. He's outside the top 1,000 overall prospects on the composite rankings. I'm just curious if you've heard anything about him or anything like that before we move on to some of the bigger names on here.
There's been a lot of buzz about him from time to time. I know he really liked the Tennessee offer. Obviously, outside of West Virginia, it's the biggest on the board for him. Mm-hmm. They are recruiting him. I know that for sure. There was almost a buzz at one point that he was committing, but I'm sure that was probably slowed down a little bit. I think he's probably at this point a guy that they want to wait a little while on. I mean, the numbers aren't the tightest at linebacker. They're going to take some guys, but you already have B.J. Ojolari, who's going to be that outside linebacker role for Darrell Taylor is. You have, guys ahead of you with Len'Neth, Noah Sewell, who could play anywhere, and then Bryson Eason. So I think he's going to have to kind of wait a little bit and see what happens. But, yeah, I think he's a guy that you definitely need to watch moving forward. Oh, and Savell Smalls as well. I think Tennessee's squarely in the race there. Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Especially with Florida State somehow having a worse season than Tennessee is at this point. So those are kind of the 2 teams that were trending for him at the start of the season. So, I think you have to watch Littlejohn a little. Wow, boy, that's a mouthful. I think you have to watch him a little bit.
Go ahead and say it, Matt.
I think you have to watch him a little bit, but I think it'll be late in the cycle if you see Tennessee move on him.
Okay, I was curious about him because I was actually sitting here as you're talking about him and watching some highlights, and he does play both sides of the ball, and he's just a bruising guy. Maybe he's a guy that, I mean, heck, we talked, Matt, talked earlier this week about running back and stuff. Maybe he's a guy if the Tennessee wants to take 2 running backs in this class, and he's finally playing running back in college. That maybe he's that guy. He's 6 foot 220, so he's obviously not a scat back or a speed back, but he's a pretty good runner from what I've been able to see from his highlight film and stuff. And he plays over in Gaffney, South Carolina, which South Carolina's been a state where Tennessee's been hitting a little harder here in recruiting the last couple years. Obviously, you look at Bryce Thompson, you look at Jalen Hyatt, both those kids on the Dutch Fork, but I mean Tennessee's been hitting other players over in South Carolina too. But you mentioned Savell Smalls in that same breath there on the linebacking position. I mean, Brandon's already mentioned Jackson Bratton. He's already mentioned he's already mentioned Len'Neth Whitehead, Bryson Eason. You also have Noah Sewell at the linebacker spot. Tennessee has a lot of needs at different positions. Tennessee right now only has one well, I guess technically 2 receivers committed to him with Jimmy Callaway, but Matt, as you and I talked about earlier this week, I mean, that's not exactly a cemented in commitment at this point for Tennessee. But how many actual linebackers do you think Tennessee will take in this class, or how many do you think they should take? Because they have one right now with B.J. Ojulari committed to him.
Yep.
There's still several guys. They are, like I said, you have maybe Little John as a guy. You have Eason, Whitehead. You have Smalls. You have Sewell. You have Jackson Bratton. I mean, there's still several different guys that Tennessee's looking. I mean, there's even a couple different names. I think Rodney Gross Jr. was one that was being batted around for a while. I don't know about now, but there are a lot of different linebackers on Tennessee's board. How many? And I'll ask the same question to you, Brandon, here in a second. How many linebackers do you think Tennessee should take in this class?
So when you look at it, I always try to do this by looking at the obvious takes. And at inside linebacker, I feel like Noah Sewell, Len'Neth, and Bryson are all probably obvious takes. Now, do you get all 3 of them? Probably not. But if you do, you just solved your running back issue because Len'Neth's going to go play running back. And that's just my opinion. He's open to playing both. I think he kind of sees himself playing defense right now because that's where most of the schools are recruiting him. But Wisconsin is recruiting him to play running back, and Wisconsin has a history of turning out great running backs that turn pro and are still really good running backs. So, if he's good enough to play running back at Wisconsin, he's good enough to play running back at Tennessee, and that's just my firm opinion on that. So if you were to get all 3 of those guys at inside linebacker, which are your top targets, in my opinion, and, mix Bratton in there, but I think that's going to be a really hard pull. Len'Neth probably goes and plays running back. So I think the magic number at inside linebacker is probably 2. In a weird case that you flip Bratton, get Sewell, and land Eason, it would be almost unheard of. You kind of have to – somebody's going to move positions, but, there could be those – I don't think you could turn any of those guys away right now if you're Tennessee with, the way Brandon mentioned you had tackled. At outside linebacker, you've got B.J. there already. Len'Neth is a guy that could actually play outside linebacker as well. So Vale Smalls, he's an obvious take. I think, we're probably going to see moving forward Quavaris Crouch playing with his hand in the dirt a good bit.
Yep.
I really like it, but it was just a matter of time until Crouch made an impact. People forget that going into the summer, with that 2019 class, Crouch and Darnell Wright were 1 and 2 on Rivals.
Yeah, that's true.
Crouch had just come off a grueling season where he carried the ball no telling how many times, ran for around 3,000 yards and 40-something touchdowns, and played every snap on defense and did it all injured. He was right to shut it down. He didn't camp. Obviously, he's going to take a drop from the ranking services. That's just how it's going to be. Even though it's apparent that they don't rate all their film based off of Friday Night Filmer, his probably would have been good enough to hold up and stay up there in the top 10. But, he's going to make an impact, and Tennessee has got to have some form of a pass rush going into SEC play. And if he gets in a groove there, he's probably going to be really effective. So, what does that kind of shift around to your numbers? So they're still recruiting guys like, Desmond Evans that can play in space as an outside linebacker. Savale Smalls that's going to play as an outside linebacker. So I can see them taking 2 to 3 there as well. So it's really tough to call because you're already at 14 guys in this class. And if you take, 2 more inside linebackers, 2 more outside linebackers, you're up to 18 all of a sudden. And you still need to find – you still need to find some wide receivers. But the good thing is Tennessee doesn't have to search for a quarterback. That's there. They're in the mix for Gilbert and Darnell Washington, who Washington is really the only and we've talked about this before, Nathaniel. Washington's really the only true tight end that they're recruiting at this point.
Yep.
Which tells me that they feel a little bit more confident than most people do. On the offensive line, you have guys like Amari Thomas that could move over and play offensive line if necessary, but he's probably going to be that big 6'5", 300-pound defensive tackle. So, guys that Tennessee really has a chance with there seem like Chris Morris, who has always been in the mix for them. And outside of that, I don't know where else they would turn on the offensive line to get a big-name impact player that they feel like crowding their numbers.
Marcus Henderson?
Yeah, Marcus Henderson is a guy that, he's been thrown around a little bit, informed me a month and a half back that Tennessee was getting an official visit, but then communication dropped off, and that's how communication's always been with him in Tennessee.
The other name I can think of would be the Doomerville kid at tackle. He's the only one I can think of, but that one's still, I think, kind of a long shot for Tennessee at the O-line.
Probably a long shot. So you got three really viable options left on the offensive line. So I don't think the numbers are going to crowd there. At defensive back, I think you're almost done. One guy that's still left is Kendall Dennis. I know Tennessee likes him. I believe he could play, several different roles in the secondary, kind of like a Tyus Fields, and I think that's why they like him so much. So I wouldn't see them closing the door on him. Guys that they're definitely going to take are Jay Hardy, Tyler Barron, and Amari Thomas on the defensive line, and they're probably leading for those. So if you pull two inside linebackers and two outside linebackers, and you end up getting the guys you're favored for with Barron and Hardy, I'm not going to say they're favored for Thomas, but they're right there. You're all of a sudden at 21, and you have room for, a Rakeem Jarrett, a Darnell Washington, Eric Gilbert, a Desmond Evans, or a Noah Sewell. I don't see Tennessee even getting maybe a combination of Gilbert and Jarrett. But right now,
don't forget Reggie Grimes on the table either.
Yeah, and you have Reggie Grimes out there as well, Brandon, which is a good point. And it's crazy to think, but Reggie Grimes is a little farther down Tennessee's list at this point. But it really is crazy to think. So when you look at receivers, I think you have to replenish that receiving core, and I think they have a chance with Theo Jones-Bell, Rakeem Jarrett. I've repeatedly been told by people close to that circle that T. Martin is the difference maker, that a relationship with a close mentor is really holding Tennessee in this despite a rough start. It kept them in it, and if Tennessee can right the ship a little bit, Tennessee's still going to be right there at the end, and will probably win out over LSU, and the primary competition could be Maryland. So, where it starts getting tricky is if Omari Thomas commits somewhere else or Tyler Barron commits somewhere else, then what does Tennessee start to do? Where do the numbers, where do they come from? I think you have to get at least probably three more guys on the defensive line. I don't know how you want to do it, but I think you probably need to get that, and that's why Barron, Hardy, and Thomas are the top three guys left right now. And when you hear any of these guys talk about any of these current commits talk about who they're peer recruiting, it's those three guys. And I think a lot of that comes from the coaching staff. If you watch games every Saturday, the pass rush has been obsolete or just never able to get, it's one of the two. They're almost there or there's nothing. There's never any in between, it doesn't seem like. So I think that's why, and for a good portion of this class, guys like that have been a priority. So, looking at current commits, you have 1, 2, 3, 3 DBs, 1 quarterback, 1 outside linebacker, 1, 2, 3 offensive linemen, a running back, and a wide receiver, and an athlete. Now, the athlete, I think, is the biggest question mark in the class, Darion Williamson. I don't know where he's going to play. He could play outside linebacker. I don't think there's any doubt about that, but I think that – and then Jimmy Callaway. I'm sorry, 2 athletes. But like you mentioned, Nathaniel, I'm not sure anything's set in stone with Jimmy Callaway right now, and he's also visiting Georgia this weekend. I was informed that of that yesterday evening. So it seems like just a matter of time till Jimmy Callaway may not be in this class. And that could be mutual. It could not be. I don't know. But I think you have to take 3 more guys on the defensive line, which gets you, let's say, 17. 2 more inside linebackers, 19. 2 more outside linebackers, 21. At least 2 more receivers. And if you get the 2 outside linebackers you want, then Darion Williamson's probably going to stay at receiver. So 2 more receivers to get you to 23, if not 3. And then, those last 2 spots could kind of go either way. If they can get a Chris Morris or a Marcus Dumerville, you're never going to turn them away. That's
right.
apparent. If you can get a Desmond Evans or a Darnell Washington, or an Eric Gilbert, you're never going to turn them away. So those I think that's pretty set in stone to 23. I'm not going to say they could vary a little bit or flux a little bit. Maybe they want to take 3 quote unquote outside linebackers, but there's multi-dimensional guys there. And Crouch is evidence of that. He played inside, then outside, then to a 3-point stance with his hand in the dirt. So there's guys like that are of value, and Noah Sewell's one of them. So I think getting to 23, it's probably 2 inside linebackers, 2 outside linebackers, 3 more defensive linemen, at least maybe 4 if you can get a really a guy you feel really confident in, and then that leaves you with 1 or 2 spots depending on how that plays out to kind of maybe just go after somebody really hard in the late signing period. And
I think maybe the thing that might make Williamson valuable in this class is, we had talked about he can play so many positions, and Tennessee's going to need another tight end. The only guy they're pursuing right now is Darnell Washington. But if something goes wrong, if Tennessee doesn't land Washington, if they don't get that signature, I think Williamson could play tight end. He would be a skinny tight end, a receiving first tight end. I think he's got the body to play tight end. I think that ability for him to be a Band-Aid and a quality athlete and a quality body to wherever you miss someone is going to be really useful for him.
I think that's the biggest thing for him. I 100% agree, Brandon.
Yeah, I think Williamson, to me, he's probably, I hesitate to say the most intriguing prospect in Tennessee's 2020 class, but he's, to me, got a lot of upside. I like his potential a lot. And like you said, he can play a lot of different positions and offer a lot to this class, and his versatility will maybe dictate where Tennessee goes in certain spots. And Brandon, I want to turn to you here before we close out the podcast. So here, just for a couple minutes, kind of offer your thoughts. Do you agree, disagree with what all kind of Matt laid out there? Is there a position you think Tennessee should hit harder than he thought, or what do you think about numbers wise and how Tennessee attacks the rest of their 2020 class?
The one place I think I would like to see us add somebody else, I think we need 1 more running back in this class. I like T. Hodge, but and maybe that running back's Len'Neth Whitehead. If you can land a Bryson Eason, and you can flip Jackson Bratton, or you can pull a Noah Sewell, or maybe you decide you like Savell Smalls better as an inside linebacker in a 3-4 scheme. And that means you feel better moving Whitehead to running back. I think they need a second running back. I think we got to address the offensive line a little bit more. I do think that's going to be an issue. I think it could be with Amari Thomas. Now, I think Amari is going to be a fantastic defensive lineman if he gets the opportunity to play that position. But, and I've said this before on this podcast, that young man is a force of nature when you put him on the offensive line. I've seen him do things to defensive linemen that I've never seen another player do. And you add him onto an offensive line with a Darnell Wright and a Wanye Morris, and maybe even potentially, and I know it's probably not going to happen, but potentially a Trey Smith, that offensive line is horrifying. to do that, I think you need to come up with another quality defensive lineman, potentially. Matt, you have talked before, and I can never remember the young man's name. 4-star recruit, committed to Kentucky. I think they have pursued him as a guard. Tennessee looked at him on the defensive line and an offensive guard.
Justin,
you have consistently felt like Rogers is a guy that could flip, and if they could flip him, it may be one of those things. If you tell Amari Thomas, you tell Rogers, look, one of y'all is going to be a guard, one of y'all is going to be a defensive end. 2 out of 3 in the middle of the ring, and we're going to settle it.
Yeah, I feel like Justin Rogers. I think I talked about this. Maybe I just talked to you about it on the phone, Brandon. I feel like I talked about it on a podcast. I don't know that it was with Nathaniel. Maybe it was. I feel like Kentucky's done a really good job keeping him in the boat to this point. The big thing for Tennessee is going to be trying to get him back on campus. He was pretty much ready to commit the weekend of the spring game, and we'll just kind of leave that there. But it was pretty close. Tennessee can get him back on campus. You're talking about a kid that's been coming to Tennessee since John Kelly's freshman year. They went to the same high school. Rogers has been coming for a while to Tennessee. He's been watching Tennessee intently. John Kelly's, active on Twitter with him in his ear about Tennessee. I doubt Tennessee's ever quit recruiting him. I doubt any school really has quit recruiting him. But he's a guy that was never really set on his decision, and I think Kentucky was the safest decision for him. I think he knew he would have a spot at Kentucky no matter what happened. And, I could be wrong on this, but he's one of the highest rated commits in Kentucky history, if not the highest rated, at least on Rivals, if I remember seeing that correctly. But I think he knew he could commit to Kentucky. Things could slow down a little bit. He could kind of focus on some other schools if he needed to. And I think Tennessee's one of the schools that has a really good chance. I think Alabama, if they really want to make a push, could. And I think Ohio State could as well. Michigan's also in the mix right there. He lives in Michigan, obviously. But there's a few schools left out there that could make a push for him. I won't necessarily say he's a flip candidate to Tennessee, but he is definitely a flip candidate in my mind. I actually just mentioned it in an article. That's where an article that's coming out tonight. I actually just had composed that a little bit ago.
Oh, nice. You mentioned Justin Rogers. He, according to 247 Sports, he is the 3rd highest rated commit ever in Kentucky history. He's trails only Antonio Hall, who 247 Sports had as a 5-star in 2000, and then Micah Johnson, who was a 5-star in 2006. Otherwise, he is the 3rd highest rated commit that they've ever had at Kentucky.
So it's pretty safe to commit there and know you can kind of fool around and not lose your spot. He could probably do that at most schools, but some other schools might be able to find another guy that they feel comfortable with. I think Kentucky is head over heels happy to have him.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Tennessee, they would absolutely be head over heels happy to have him too. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. But I think that's a good spot for us to kind of end this podcast here. Brandon, happy to have you back, and Matt, I'm happy to have you again as well for the second podcast this week. I'm looking forward to the game this weekend, and even though I'm not a huge believer in Tennessee getting the victory, I think it's still going to be an interesting matchup, and it'll be very telling about the rest of Tennessee's season. Guys, I think next week our podcast will be very interesting, especially win or lose. It'll be very interesting if Tennessee loses. It might be a little doom and gloom from the people when we ask for the mailbag questions, but if Tennessee wins, I mean, we're going to be right back in the thick of things and talking about, hey, Tennessee's got, that win, they could turn the season around. They got a chance with all these 5-stars. So I'm very much looking forward to our mailbag question podcast next week, and then also some other topics that I'm looking forward to discussing with you guys as well. But before I end the podcast here, I want to let you guys to, plug what you're going to have on Vol Recruiting Reports. Matt, I know you said you got something coming out there. You were just talking about that piece just then. And then Brandon, I know you said you're going to see Jackson Bratton, but both of you guys talk about pieces you're going to do, places you all and the other members of VR2 are going to be to go watch players this weekend, and just share all that information.
So Brandon will be at Baylor and Ensworth. I'll let him tell you just a little bit more about that in just a second. And then I'm going to Macaulay School to watch Macaulay and Knoxville Catholic. So you have two of the three guys that I mentioned that I think Tennessee really needs on the defensive line there, in Tyler Barron and Jay Hardy. And then Cooper Mays is also there. And there's some younger prospects at Knoxville Catholic. We couldn't really find an Atlanta game that was intriguing enough as far as 2020 prospects went to make the drive. So Dale is going to be right up the road from me at Ottawa High School covering Ottawa versus Bradley Central. And Bradley is home to Trey Curry, who has kept things relatively quiet but visited Tennessee a couple of times over the spring. He's the top player for in the state for 2021 according to the 247 Sports rankings. And we're going to get some stuff out on him. And then I'll let Brandon tell you in just a second, like I said, about the Baylor-Ensworth game. We actually had Elijah Howard. We recorded our podcast with him for our Sunday sidelines that will come out this Sunday after the Tennessee game. We recorded with him last night. Really good interview with him. He's really hyped up for this game against Keyshawn Lawrence, and those two commits are doing a lot of talking. So, going to get several Tennessee commits this weekend and several Tennessee top targets in action. Check us out on the premium. It comes out on all of our social media. We're on Twitter at _VR2_, on Facebook at Vol Recruiting Reports, and on Instagram at Vol Recruiting Reports. And then, of course, you can go to the normal website at volrecruitingreports.org. So, Brandon, go ahead and end this thing.
Yeah, I'm going to be heading on Friday night to watch Baylor at Ensworth. I've not had a chance to see Ensworth yet this year, so I'm excited to get my eyes on Keyshawn Lawrence myself. Also, Turrentine, the 2021 defensive back they have that's so impressive out there. We talked to Elijah Howard, of course, another 2021 Tennessee commit. Really excited to see what he does and how he plays. Also getting a bonus game in this week. As soon as we get done on here, I'm going to be heading up the road a little bit to Stratford High School, where they're playing East Nashville Magnet High School. East Nashville has got a corner with a Tennessee offer, a 3-star corner here in state with a Tennessee offer. They've got a few guys. They've got several guys with FBS offers, and they've got a 2021 athlete that I'm really interested to get my eyes on. I wasn't really sure I was going to be able to do that, then realized it's about 2 miles from work, so I'm going to go.
Nice. Well, that's great. Like they both have said, check out volrecruitingreports.org at _VR2_ on Twitter, and then their Vol Recruiting Reports or VR2 also on Instagram. They do fantastic work, not just you guys, but the entire kind of team of contributors you guys have over at Vol Recruiting Reports. All of you guys do great work. So if you want to get the latest on Tennessee recruiting and get some more kind of interaction that you'll probably get from other sites too, because these guys, they'll interact with you. They won't kind of turn the nose up at you. They'll talk with you and answer questions and things like that. So if you want some good interactive, yes, what, Matt?
All for $2 a month.
Yeah, absolutely. Even just online on social media, you guys interact with fans and stuff all the time. Yeah, and you're not going to get a better value than what you guys are offering with your premium stuff there. So check them out. volrecruitingreports.org. Check out their premium stuff, and be sure to check out all of our content as well at RockyTopInsider.com. They do all the football recruiting. We cover quite a bit of basketball recruiting actually on RTI. So if you're still going to recruiting buzz there and interested in basketball, we've got quite a bit of stuff actually on the site right now. And we've also got plenty of stuff for Tennessee and Florida this weekend. We'll have plenty of stuff after the game as well. But signing off for Matt and Brandon, I am Nathaniel Rutherford. Thank you all so much again, and this has been another episode of the RTI and VR2 Recruiting Podcast.